Okay, we're going to go over a few basic design fundamentals when it comes to typography or designing letters. Now, the first one is starting with a baseline. So when you begin designing your word art, whether it's pencil and paper or digitally, I want you to view that piece of paper or your work station as a picture plane. And center, or rather not center, but just place your baseline in a position on the picture plane that gives you enough room to do the other things that you want to do with your word art. So for the baseline, it just is what it sounds like. You're drawing a line, and in this case, since I'm just using Word, I'm going to go ahead and grab just a line, and I'm going to draw a line here on the bottom, not completely on the bottom of my page, but just draw a line like that. And remember, this is just draw it with a light sketching line because this kind of stuff is there to help us create a good design, but it will get erased after we finish that design. Okay, so the baseline basically is the line that the letters are going to sit on. Now, it doesn't mean to say that there won't be some letters that you design that go below the baseline. And in the case of the height line, so we're going to do the same here. We're going to go ahead and grab another line and then draw a height line, creating that space from the bottom to the top where our general's letters are going to sit. Let me move that up a little bit so it's a little straight. So there we're giving ourselves a baseline. The letters for the most part are going to hit here on the bottom, and for the most part they're going to hit here on the top. Okay, there's a couple other things that we want to do, and this time we're going to draw what's called descenders or ascenders, and that's just going to go a little bit below, understanding that letters like G or Y, depending on how we draw them, and certainly in the case of lowercase letters, or what we call refer to those letters, minuscule letters. Lowercase letters are called minuscule letters. And we're going to do the same thing for the ascender line, and that just means that the letters ascend above the height line. So we'll do this over here, keep it going, get it straight. And so depending again on how you design your letters, but if they're minuscule letters, then like the H goes above, can go above the height line. So it gives us as an awareness. It allows us to keep our letters looking nice and neat and well designed and following the same lines or the same heights or the same descending line, that sort of thing. Okay, the next thing I want you to do is I want you to think about what's called the midline. And that's also another useful line in terms of, so let's say it's just directly in the middle. Now this midline can move up and down. And again, it's a little diagonal there, so we'll fix it here. There we go. But depending on how you want to stylize your letters, it can be moved up or down like that. So in the case of a B, for instance, and I'm just going to draw it really quickly, just invisibly, there's the top part of the B and then the second part of the B like that. You can see that the midline is useful, again, for getting all of the middle parts of your letters lined up. But if you wanted to do a creative midline, then parts of this line could move up and down to give you some stylistic decisions, stylistic choices. Okay, the next concept is called centering. And that means that we're just going to draw a center line in the middle. Let's get rid of that. Let's grab our line here. Okay, so that's our center line. Now what that means is that for our whole word to fit in the picture plane, we need to count up the letters and spaces that might exist, including the punctuation, and divide it in half. So that when we do design our letters, we're designing them on either side of that middle line. So if there is a word like, say, table, we count the letters and say we want to put table and a question mark. Then we'll count the question mark along with the letters. So we've got T-A-B-L-E and a question mark. That is 6 altogether, which means that 3 of the letters, T-A-B, will sit on the left side of that center line, and then L-E question mark will sit on the right side of that question mark. So that's essentially how that works. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to draw a text box at this point, and I'm going to put a text box in here so we can actually include a word. Now we're going to increase the size of that word significantly. Let's say 72. Is that large enough? No, not really, but we could probably go even larger. Let's see here if that fits a little bit better. Okay, perfect. 150. Okay, so what that means then, I'm going to go ahead and, depending on the style, I'm going to pick something that is a little bit more stylistic. It's going to take a minute to populate, but I can at least start beginning. Okay, let's pick something that is a little bit more. Let's do Arial black for now. Okay, so now you can see that this particular T at the size is basically going just above the midline. So if I were to grab even a larger letter, let's see if I can grab a larger letter. Oh, let's just continue here. Okay. And question mark. Okay, so you can see that based on this script, it's not fitting our formula, and we've run out of space for the question mark. So let's kind of go back and let's pick a different script so that we can experiment with what we're doing here. Okay, so now it's centered well enough, but just keep in mind that when you do your project, not only will you be using letters and applying a style to your letters that help you communicate essentially the concept of your word art, but also replacing some of those letters, 1 or 2 or 3 of those letters, with actual pictures that are in the same shape as the letter, so that when someone looks at your word art, they can not only see the pictorial representation of the concept of your word art, but they can also see that the picture follows the shape of, say, the B. Or in this case, let's pick something. I could get rid of the E, and instead of an E, I could actually literally put the shape of a table, maybe turn vertically so that it looks like the E. Or maybe even use a chair, because obviously sometimes with tables there comes along chairs. And so I could draw a picture of a chair that resembles the letter E, and that would count as a substitution. So when it comes to your designs, then I want you to use a baseline, a height line, and then even if you don't draw the ascender and descender line, I want you to understand that some of your design can go below the baseline and above the height line, and sometimes we do that for creative purposes. But certainly I want you to center your word in the picture plane, in the area that you're designing, by using our formula. You count the letters, including any spaces or punctuation, and you divide that in half. And that way you can see that each space accounts for a letter and will be evenly designed on either side of the center line. Okay, so that's so I'd like to see that design work as you get started, and have that be there. It's a basic premise of designing anything, really, is to first design the structural components.